Folks, absolutely shocking. Of course, the world was stunned when Tyre Nichols, when this video was released, showing him being viciously beaten to death by these cops. It's clear, it's obvious. And you had two of the cops who pled guilty testified against them, and it's like literally, what the hell were they seeing? In their mind, they literally think that these three cops had no role to play in the death of Tyre Nichols?
The acquittal of the three Memphis cops who took part in killing Tyre Nichols is devastating.
I'm clearly not in a good mood. And as far as I'm concerned, none of us should be on this evening.
It's devastating. It's a slap in the face.
3 houses, not 3 blocks, not 3 miles, 3 houses away from where he lived. 5 police officers.
It's disgusting. It's repugnant.
All black, 5 police officers in Memphis, Tennessee.
It's offensive. It's maddening. It shows a reckless disregard for Black life. It endangers Black life. It shows that Black lives don't matter.
And beat this dude so mercilessly, I don't even know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. It's devastating.
Yesterday was a devastating blow to our family. What we heard was not something that we wanted to hear. But was I shocked or surprised? No, I wasn't. Those defense attorneys were allowed to go in front of the judge and basically tell the judge that even though this happened in Shelby County, that the people of Shelby County was not smart enough, to look at the evidence and make an impartial decision. So they were allowed to go into another county where I feel that county, Hamilton County, didn't give a rat's butt about my son. They were allowed to come here and look at the evidence, but they didn't see the evidence. What they saw was a black man running from the police. That's what they saw. What they saw was a black man running from the police. They didn't care that my son was afraid for his life.
The defense and the prosecution. When you take a look at these jurors, there were 8 women, there were 4 men. They were all white in this particular case, and they came from a completely different county in Tennessee. How do you think that impacted this verdict?
I think it was the singular thing that made the difference in this particular verdict. It is not a jury of peers, according to the 6th Amendment. It does not fit the description. You're talking about people who have no context and no cultural connection to this community. The lived experiences of these individuals probably do not make up some of the same experiences that Tyre Nichols and his family and others here have experienced. So I think we have a lot to go back. And I want to say one other thing, that we have to really not dismiss this this moment, I think something that D.A. Mulroy said, with all due respect, I do have great respect for his office and the efforts that were made, but this is a Monday morning quarterbacking situation. We do have a sentinel moment here where something as clear as 21 opportunities to get one guilty verdict did not happen. So we got to go back and dissect this and figure it out. If everybody just goes home now and says, well, it's over, it's done, then this community gets no justice at all. We need to have some understanding of what went wrong here and what could we have learned or what can we do better so that if and or when this happens again, we don't make the same mistake twice.
You mentioned the lived experiences that come into play when a jury is making its decision. Talk to us about why that is important.
So when you look at it, you can see in the United States of America, this is data proven, that the same experiences that an African-American male has with a police force is not the same lived experience as a Caucasian male and or female, especially in spaces like Memphis where crime is higher, and then you do have the DOJ situation that's happening right here, right now. And so you definitely have two different experiences. I believe, and I'm this is just a gut feeling on my part, we had a lot of weariness in this. We've been dealing with this since January 7, 2023. It did not sound like an enthusiastic case was presented. It sounded as if we came to a jury selection where we said, let's go get 12 people. We picked the jury very quickly, I think, on this as well. And when we got them into Shelby County and they began to hear this case, I don't know that they really had a full context of what it means to be a person who lives in the city of Memphis, especially a young 29-year-old African-American male.
All right, you're watching WREG News Channel 3 at 3. We're continuing our coverage. If you're just now joining us, of the verdict in the Tyre Nichols trial, stunning development from the downtown criminal courthouse in Memphis, where all three police officers, Darius Bean, Justin Smith, and Demetrius Haley, were found not guilty on all charges, all 21 counts that they were facing. They rolled the dice in this particular trial, and in this case, they ran the table. They were the winners in this particular case. The Tyre Nichols family did not come out on top, and they were certainly disappointed by that. Keith, as we continue our discussion here, are you suggesting that this was not a jury of their peers?
Otis Sanford, political analyst here for ABC 24, joining us now. Otis, I just want your initial thoughts and just reactions from today's outcome.
Well, I have two sort of extreme reactions. One is I'm not surprised that the worst charges, the murder charges, they were found not guilty. I'm not surprised by that. It seems to me that the ones who did the most in terms of causing Tyre Nichols' death are the ones who pled guilty to the charge. So I'm not surprised by that. I am surprised that none of the lesser charges, oppression and failing to follow procedure and things like that, I am surprised that there were no guilty verdicts on any of those, and it doesn't seem like the jury even considered that. That's my initial reaction. But I think I said before that I'm just not convinced that the prosecution put on enough proof. They had 5 witnesses. They didn't have anybody from the police department that I heard that talked about policies and procedures, which was part of the defense. And so I'm just surprised I was surprised by the lack of a robust prosecution here when the defense brought in at least 17 witnesses. And of course you have what appears to be a police-friendly jury here. Those are my initial reactions.
Yeah, you're echoing a lot of the same notes that Pastor Fisher had here.
I stole his notes.
And I didn't.
I stole his notes and I beat him here. So.
Right. And I was driving and didn't even hear it, so I didn't steal his.
No, for sure. One of the things that District Attorney Mulroy said was the fact that they felt like they did everything they could have. He couldn't really think back, and he wasn't going to take it there, essentially, just what they should or shouldn't have done. What do you think about his reaction coming out of the courtroom? And he is, proud of his team. They've worked hard, clearly.
Well, yeah, I mean, I heard some of that when I was preparing to come down. That's what you expect. I mean, he's not going to get out there and trash his team. These are experienced prosecutors. Mr. Hagerman is very experienced, so he's not going to do that. But I just say again that the stakes were really high here. And, I think you put on more proof than you need and overwhelm the jury as much as you can. Yes, there was video, and it was very compelling video. But the video alone, because of the nighttime and you really can't see who did what to whom in some respects, you needed more than just the video to prove the top level cases. And when we talk about the lesser charges, you needed someone to clearly explain, someone from the police department, to clearly explain, no, this was not procedure. No, you are not supposed to treat people this way and hold them this way and then misstate what you did. Those are violations, and those were part of the lesser charges. So while I expect that D.A. Mulroy, I expected him to say what he said, I'm just not sure that the public is going to buy all of it, honestly.
Yeah, Pepper, to Otis's point, I study, my PhD is in rhetoric and communication from the University of Memphis. I'm sure Otis appreciates
Good old U of it.
Right, and one of the things we learn about is what's called epidictic or ceremonial rhetoric. So what do we expect Mulroy to say?
Exactly.
He's not going to get up there and say that his team put on a mediocre defense or lacked zeal or was not thorough. Who knows what he might say behind closed doors? Who knows how much influence he had on whatever kind of defense was put together? Same is true, or the point that I'm trying to make regarding C.J. Davis. Was it simply ceremonial rhetoric when she stood in front of hundreds of millions of people on national news outlets and said they violated policy, they did not follow their training? There is a gap between what came out in this trial and what came out of Chief Davis's mouth, which says someone must be lying. And we, the general public, would hope that that truth would come out during the trial. It didn't come out during the trial. We're left with just as many questions as we had before insofar as what the fundamental truth is. And so what do people expect the general public to feel, except for a level of skepticism? Because we know if I or Otis were on trial, chances are that prosecution would have been a lot more thorough, comprehensive, and aggressive. They say it's better to have something and not need it than to need it and not have it. They clearly needed much more evidence and did not have it.
And go ahead.
Oh, I agree with that 100%. And to the point with Chief C.J. Davis, and I don't understand why she wasn't called as a witness.
And that was one topic we discussed as well.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Because the prosecution, their job is to prosecute. And they can't worry about anything else. And if there was a fear that, or there was some concern that, well, she really can't testify because the civil case is hanging over their head, that's not the prosecution's problem. The prosecution is there to prosecute the charges that they filed.
Right.
When you file those charges, you were telling the public, I have the evidence to sustain those charges. And now we see that if they had it, they didn't present it. And I just think, again, that either C.J. Davis or one of her chief top people should have been on that witness stand talking about policies and procedures and violation of procedures, because that went to the heart of the defense.
So do you have any insight as to why that didn't happen, why she wasn't called to that?
I have none. I mean, my sources are from many years ago in the police department, so I don't have them. I can only surmise that maybe she was hesitant to testify, or somebody higher up in the police department was hesitant to testify because of the civil case, and they don't want to admit some liability that then they would have to show in the civil case. But again,
Brother Otis,
that doesn't have anything to do with this case.
And Brother Otis, a Google search will show you what she said.
Absolutely.
So it's not like they are asking her to present testimony that is not already in the public record.
I agree with you.
So here's what, since we can't speculate just a little bit, and so I'm conceding that I'm speculating this, but I think there is enough precedent historically to validate what I'm trying to say, that there is a collusion, and I don't mean that in the worst sense, but a collusion between these different factions of law enforcement. So you had the DA's office, you had the Memphis Police Department, you have other law enforcement agencies and entities, and they know they must work together. And so if you put on as robust and comprehensive and thorough as a defense as you need to, all of a sudden you have hung the culture of policing out to dry. You've laid it bare, which is something an advocate like me is praying for and begging for and pushing for. Whatever it is, as ugly and as heinous as it is, let's deal with it. We had an opportunity to deal with it. They chose not to. This is my argument. They would have to prove me wrong. They chose not to. And in doing so, you now placed an unrealistic burden on a jury that is not from the area, doesn't understand the culture. Most of them have probably never experienced what people like Tyre Nichols or black folks in Memphis and Shelby County experience from police. And now they don't have the consciousness to sift through what they seen and what they heard, coupled with the instructions that are given from, because most of us don't speak legalese. Most of us don't know some of the ins and outs of law and what you can and cannot do. Most of them, I don't even know, and I bet you in weeks or years, when they start interviewing, you know, they say Juror B or something like that. Juror B is going to say, I didn't know I could have A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And so now we have to wait on that. So again, I disagree with Otis 1,000% here. It's a missed opportunity because there was not enough righteous, robust, relevant evidence that was presented that would have made this as much of a no-brainer as some of us who feel like we know a little bit more just clearly see this as.
So
well, I'm not going to, very briefly.
Go ahead.
I wouldn't use, and I understand how you phrased that. I'm not going to use the word collusion.
Yeah, you can give me a better
word. That's Earl's word, not mine.
Yeah.
But I do get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because the factions here do have to work together on other cases and down the road. And you are absolutely right about the makeup of the jury and their lived experiences. I mean, when you pick a jury, you are expecting that jury to bring their lived experiences to the case. It happens all the time. I covered hundreds of trials back in the 70s and 80s as a reporter. And you can't dismiss your lived experiences. And so that's part of this case as well. That, to Earl's point, it is incumbent then upon the prosecution to cut through and get to your lived experiences and help them understand what happened here and why it was a crime and why they should be convicted, and I think that's where they fell short.
So with that said, where does this put the public's trust in not only MPD, but then all of the local agencies that are then working with MPD?
I think this echoes the skepticism and the sentiment that people have been expressing. Read the DOJ report, and you will see how much distrust, and I say warranted distrust, exists amongst the citizens in the community. And again, this is why certain people don't come forward. There are several people who have said that they have experienced similar things from the Scorpion unit or the Memphis gang unit and other units, but they don't feel like they should come forward because they don't believe that they would get justice. And I think here we are again with more truth to that fact.
Yeah, I think it is a huge setback for all the entities here involved. Yes, we have that DOJ report that was prepared during a previous administration, I might add. And now we have a new administration that really, as far as they're concerned, put it on the shelf somewhere, never to be seen again. And then you have a city administration that, for whatever reason, righteous or otherwise, they said, we are not going to go into any kind of consent decree. It's too costly, to this, to that. But we are going to put together this committee, this group, the fact-finding group, and they are fine people, all of them. But again, you ask about the public here. And I think this really does damage to the public perception that fairness is involved, not just in the police department, but in the police department working with all of these other entities, to the point that you brought up, that says we can't get a fair shake in this community. And my trust in the entities, the institutions that are designed to protect and serve, they're not doing that way.
Or maybe protection and service is just a political facade. is something that you put forth. What you really mean is punishment and surveillance, which is what we experienced here. And so again, I don't see how we can reasonably expect anything less than skepticism, because the system and the structure keeps proving itself insofar as its inability to give the average black man or woman a fair trial in the system. One thing we didn't discuss last week, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this, Otis. I know we talked about it a little bit. The first thing I thought when I heard about the makeup of the jury is, how did this happen? No African Americans, not an African American man, not an African American woman. I sat in that courtroom. I looked. Now I know some of this is going to be biased based upon my perception, right? But ethnically, I saw a bunch of conventional white men and women. I saw one brother who probably is Latino, but could pass for white. I saw one sister who may have been Asian or Filipino or Latina. Other than that, it looked like what you think when you close your eyes and say Chattanooga.
What was the jury pool? I mean, the broader makeup.
Great question, I don't know.
Yeah.
Our Lauren Turman does have that information, but I do want to cut it off here for now. Thank you so much, Pastor Fisher, for being
Thank
here. I
y'all
know
for
you have
having
to
me.
leave.